Does this count as Clueless Cataclysm?
This does count as Clueless Cataclysm.
Are you cheating on Kevin?
I'm cheating on Kevin and Jack. It's okay. They gave me permission. This is an open relationship.
It's an open podcast.
This is an open podcast.
Wide open podcast.
This is the wide open podcast.
With special guests.
Who would be a special guest on the wide open podcast?
That's why it's wide open, because it's filled with special guests.
To the brim.
There's this dog from off the streets. Found some roadkill. You look like the Riddler.
Thank you. Don't I just feel loved?
I was thinking, like, who does he look like? And yeah, the Riddler.
Cool.
I'm assuming he's wearing his green hoodie again.
Your face is wearing my green hoodie again.
It's just with the green hoodie and the ginger hair.
Yeah. You're in the fluorescent orange. That's not ginger.
Yeah. Ben, what are you looking at?
Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
Now, Ben, you need to maintain exactly that level.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome to the Clueless Cataclysm. I'm Callum Lewis, and today we have 3 special guests, which is quite a record. I'm not. What was this special guest face that you're giving me?
So we're special guests.
You are special guests.
Good to know.
Didn't you feel very special there?
We don't feel very special.
No, we don't.
You don't feel very special.
We don't feel special at all.
Welcome to the Clueless Cataclysm. I'm Callum Lewis, and today we have some very ultra special guests on the show. Today, Jack and Kev won't be joining us. They are currently indisposed. So, we have 3 replacements for those 2 men, which is good maths, actually.
It's fairly good maths, yes.
Yeah, it's very good maths. So, do you want to introduce yourselves in order?
Hello, I'm Ben Rimmer.
I'm Ewan Cowhick-Croft.
And I'm Alex White.
Yes. You may remember Alex from our previous podcast on art design. How did you enjoy that podcast, Alex?
Yeah, it went alright, I think. Despite the building work that was going on outside my room for literally the entire thing. And actually stopped shortly after.
Oh, well that's convenient. Is there building work going on outside there now?
No. They would have stopped about 3 hours ago, so...
Okay then. Ben?
Hello.
Hello. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, yes, I'm Ben. I am Ewan's arch nemesis in all things, and I am an engineering student.
Brilliant. And Ewan?
I'm Ewan. I'm a recent graduate, I suppose.
Recent graduate of what? Because the audience doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, things.
Ewan is a graduate of games design and creative writing. So, today I thought, now that we had these 3 very ultra special guests, we're going to do something a little different. We've done specials before. So, today we're going to do a Gears of War podcast special.
I thought we were doing Elder Scrolls Online.
Shut up.
I was also told we were doing Elder Scrolls Online.
I think if we do Elder Scrolls Online, Callum's head might literally explode from rage.
Can we do Elder Scrolls Online?
No.
Welcome to the Clueless Cataclysm. It's just me. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about Gears of War. It's not just chainsaws. And we will tell you why.
It's just chainsaws.
It's not just chainsaws. Sometimes there's chainsaws on guns.
Yes.
Mostly chainsaws.
It's mostly chainsaws.
On trains.
On trains.
The one decent comic Control-Alt-Delete has ever produced.
I love that comic. So, obviously this podcast will be very spoiler heavy. And I thought, rather than go through each game one by one, and talk about its various strengths and weaknesses, I thought we'd just look at the series as a whole. That okay?
Well, it's more of a series of games rather than a whole.
I see what you did there.
We all saw what he did there, and it was a shit pun. So, yeah, looking at the series as a whole.
Okay, so yeah, very short history and development of the first game. It began as a vehicle-based Unreal Tournament game, and then eventually became the flagship title of the 360.
Arguably, the
For a
flagship
while.
title.
For a while, before Halo 3 came out, it was definitely all about Gears of War.
I'd probably agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, for at least a year, possibly 2 years before Halo 3, I'd say it was the runner.
See, I'm not I didn't know much about the development of the title itself, but I can see where they tried to differ it from other shooters at the time.
Yeah, I mean, arguably it's the genesis of the chest-high walls, third-person action shooter. Arguably, it has been done before, but this definitely popularised it.
Well, you can say a game has been done before. I mean, there are often examples of this where there is a genre of games that has been done a couple of times, but then one game comes out that basically is the definitive game for, in this case, the chest-high wall genre. And if you're going to talk about chest-high walls, shooter, from a third-person perspective, Gears of War is the game you think of in that situation. There might have been earlier versions, but they're the ones that really pinned down the formula.
Yeah, certainly. It seems quite odd going from a vehicle-based Unreal Tournament, though, because vehicles don't seem to be the primary focus at all. Quite a massive change there.
I think so, yeah, but thinking back to the Unreal Tournament games, and particularly the shooting style of the Unreal Tournament third-person mode, vehicles seem like they'd be quite a jarring change of tone if you ever move from vehicles to ground combat to vehicles to ground combat. Because within Gears of War, you're not a particularly mobile character. I mean, you can crouch, run, you can dive around, but you're not.
You say you're not a mobile character. You are. You're a mobile character in a constricted level. You can move everywhere and over everything that isn't incredibly impassable.
I'll refine that. You're a mobile character, but you feel quite immobile. The feel of the character is not, it's...
You mean mobile as in very, agile?
Yeah, you don't feel agile at all. You don't feel like you should be... You don't feel like you should be moving around at great speed, even if you can.
Yeah.
So a vehicle would be possibly quite a grating change. I mean, I don't mean like a lumbering tank. I mean like a quick, say, quad bike a la Halo 3.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I could see a quad bike in Gears of War.
Or any kind of quick recon vehicle in Gears. It
wouldn't work. It would just look like someone had taken the top off of a car.
And yeah, in any case, I think the whole...
You could probably use a smart car as a quad bike.
The whole idea of innovative cover, the whole idea of changing the whole cover system, because where previously you'd had to use your own brain as to using corners of walls as cover by ducking behind them, then moving out and shooting, then moving back in. But whereas now you could press a button and move into cover. The whole cover system, as in the way it works with Gears, wouldn't work with vehicles. Because you have loads and loads of bits of chest-high walls all over the place, which would be completely useless to run a vehicle through.
You say that. I haven't played it, but what's the cover system in Titanfall? Because that's seamless shifting between vehicle and non-vehicle combat, isn't it?
I think so, but it's also a different kind of vehicle.
It's first person and it's a lot faster paced. I can see what Ben was saying before about going from a very slow lumbering character to a quick vehicle.
It's more about the whole idea that you couldn't have the way the Gears of War has its combat, its firefight combat, as in chest high walls, clearly defined areas of cover and non-cover. But you couldn't bring a vehicle into that because the vehicle wouldn't be able to maneuver between the areas of cover easily. And conversely, if you made it able to destroy cover, as in just go straight through it, it would make ground combat completely pointless. You basically have to have a vehicle game. Because you couldn't just hide behind a bit of cover because someone would just run the cover over and just kill you.
So in light of that, I'm quite glad that it didn't end up as a vehicle-based Unreal Tournament.
Probably.
I'm quite glad it became its own thing. So I'm not so sure that. We've had arguments very recently about this. I brought up the topic of influences on Gears of War, and I know that Ewan's got a few opinions on this. So, when I was thinking of what might have influenced Gears of War, the first things that came to mind were Starship Troopers, and
I have to agree.
You have to agree with Starship Troopers.
Yeah, I mean, I know the CGI version of Starship Troopers, the animated episodes, those came before Gears.
Yeah.
As did some of the movies, and there is a lot of the emergence sort of factor that runs as a theme through a lot of Starship Troopers, which, yeah, I'd say that can carry on through. And on top of that, I've not really watched the movies extensively, but the CGI ones, the fully CGI ones, I've watched at great length billions of times. And it has to be said that, yeah, they're expendable but otherwise slow to move characters because of the trials that they're facing. And that does kind of translate over to what Marcus and his group have to go through on a daily basis. The progress that they make can't be rapid because they haven't got the resources to move that quickly.
They're not expendable characters, though. That's the whole point of Starship Troopers, is that the troopers themselves are the ultimate investment of military technology. Okay, so...
You mean in the novel form of Starship Troopers? Because in the films
they
are...
In the films, the trouble is, the narrative has them as so, that they are, but they don't get any of the tech that they're supposed to have. So in the films, they're portrayed as they're still supposed to be ridiculously valuable, but they don't have any of the hardware or training that actually costs the money, which is why the films don't really make sense. The films are slightly dodgy ones because they're not Starship Troopers particularly. What they are is, I think it was... I can kind of see with the enemies underground and things, but even on that level, holes are nothing alike. No. They're very dry and dirty for the bugs in the film, and they're they're full of life, even if it's just water, dank water, or dripping from the tunnel surfaces in Gears. For the animated series, again, the troopers cost a lot of money, and they're a supreme investment. Plus, there's no humanizing of the enemy at all, whereas Gears goes to moderate lengths to show that these things are people, that they have feelings and thoughts and emotions, and that they're being ruthlessly mown down anyway. And the books have absolutely no relation whatsoever. They're supremely mobile to the extent that they've all got jetpacks, they fly around at hundreds of miles an hour, they come equipped with nuclear grenade launchers. Yeah, there's just no comparison at all.
I think you're taking the idea that an influence has to be a complete influence. I think possibly the influence that they have, the Starship Troopers has on Gears of War it might just be the enemy from below. They come up out of the ground. And actually, if you think about the first game, it's not really till the second game where they discover they have a city, a culture to the Locust, that they really start to humanize the Locust. Before then, it's more like they're a twisted reflection of humanity. They don't seem to have souls or compassion because they just randomly kill people.
That's a point. I agree. I mean, sorry, Ben. It's one of the things that is said in the first episode of Starship Troopers, the animated series. Bugs don't have souls. They hunt, they kill, and that's pretty much how it goes. They have no soul, and that's very much the way that locusts are portrayed in the first game.
We are talking about the whole series.
In any case, getting away from Starship Troopers, I think one influence I would put onto the whole Gears series as a whole, particularly from the films about it, less so than the extended stuff, is Aliens, the Alien franchise.
Really?
What? Thinking back to the points in the Alien series, particularly Aliens, the sequel to the first film, is that
the James Cameron.
Yes, it's that these things can come from anywhere, from the darkness, where you least expect them. Nowhere is safe. There are a few isolated places where you can be reasonably certain they're not going to get you. But these things can come out of nowhere. These things are amazingly brutal. and there is basically no stopping them short of pitched line static defense, and even then you can get attacked from behind.
I suppose as well as that, you can also see the alien influence being through the locusts, more a reliance on biotech. A lot.
Yeah.
They do use weapons in the conventional sense, but they also use
Corpses and brutes.
just the local animals as siege weaponry and vehicles and things.
Without even realising it, the scorched earth tactics. In the Aliens films, the worlds where aliens had taken hold, scorched earth, kill the planet. In terms of Gears, there was the feeling of they're going to lose to the locust, scorch the earth, kill the planet.
Yeah.
Just completely vaporise the place with the Hammer of Dawn.
Okay. So you and you seem to
You
seem to be a bit reserved about it.
I'm
So
trying to work out how.
to put it in a different light, what do you think might have influenced Gears of War? What else can you see in it?
Genuinely can't think of anything.
Really?
I mean, I'm sure the influences exist. They're just perhaps not within my frame of reference. I mean, so what are the themes of it? It's a series about military-industrial complexes and the road to hell being paved with good intentions. But in the way they portray that, I can't really imagine, just off the top of my head, I can't think of anything similar.
In terms of the plot, there's not really a plot that's quite similar to it, even though it does draw from a lot of aspects, as you say, military-industrial, the road to hell being paved to good intentions.
Yeah.
The idea of for the greater good, like when, as I said before, when they kill the planet with the Hammer of Dawn, this is very much, we're killing 90% of the habitable land on the planet, everything's going to die, but humanity's going to survive. If we do this, we might have a chance of winning. So, it's very much a thing of, you've got to pity the guy who's got to push the button.
They never call it the greater good. They never put a positive spin on any of the actions they take.
No, but it's the way you describe that kind of action.
No, but it could be, but I would argue that the way they couch things is important. And Gears never portrays any of the destruction as a good thing. It's only ever really shown to lead to more destruction. What's the Queen's line at the end that Phoenix doesn't have? He thought of himself as an intelligent man.
All he ever created was more weapons.
Clever ways to kill is her phrase. And it's totally fucking true. All he does throughout the series is think that he knows best and fuck everyone over repeatedly.
Well, she called him out today. She said, first thing she said to him was hubris.
Yeah. But it's...
That's after he's dead.
It...
She's
That's
her
final... Oh, dude. She's talking about Adam Phoenix.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, the son... I mean... No offense, a lot of ways to kill, but they're not really clever ways to kill. I mean,
Marcus Phoenix could gun down a platoon of men. Adam Phoenix can kill a planet.
Does kill a planet.
Well,
but I think we're getting a bit off track. We can go back to it later. But do you have
one influence that was brought up that I know is going to be conscientious among the guests is contentious among the guests. Just for that, I'm going to argue some more. Is 40k.
Definitely.
Particularly the grim, dark future vibe of 40k.
Sorry, what was your point, Alex?
Oh no, I was agreeing. I mean, big chunky spacemen with armor and guns. Everything is explosive and everything can kill you. It's
so it's more the iconography rather than the actual narrative that was influencing Gears.
When it comes to, if you were to bring 40k into it, then it's more the silhouette of 40k rather than the plot of 40k.
I can agree with that.
Again, we're talking about influences. They've clearly taken some ideas from 40k, particularly grimdark future. They're not Space Marines, but
it's not grimdark. It's dark, but it's okay. So grimdark implies that there is a level of darkness and death and destruction in the universe. Beyond the scale that's happening on Serra. The horrible thing about Gears of War is that it's not grimdark, it's just grim. Every time you think it's about to go post-apocalyptic, it doesn't. They show that the world can always take another punch. There are always more people to be killed. Every time you cause a massacre, there are still people waiting in the wings who you can let down. You are never not culpable. It's not grimdark.
I think that's a very good point.
In my defence, I'm not entirely clear on the definition of grimdark future. It's a depressing future to look forward to. But in any case, the chainsaws on the guns. It's a clear influences.
Yeah.
That's it. One thing I would talk about for the influences on, particularly the enemy design, is Tyranids. They're a bioorganism that uses living creatures as weapons. They have giant support things that they turn into weapons, like Carnifexes are basically tanks. You can make an allegory for that with the Brumac. They're not the same, but you get the idea. There may have been some influence.
Saying about these things, but the thing is, with the Tyranids and with Alien, you're bringing in biomechanical stuff. They're not biomechanical.
No,
they don't slot into these things. They ride them. They're beasts of war. They're not attached to them in any way. There's an emphasis on primitive technology and the fact that they've got a very nascent,
I think it's very much
culture.
I think it's very much a hybrid form of it. They do rely on
saddles.
It's
well,
less,
yeah.
With the Brumac, it's less about. But with the Brumac, it's less about.
I think we might be splitting hairs here.
Okay.
So I
hairs
think
are there to be split.
the hairs are there to be split, but so rather than looking at it from an influences upon Gears of War, what do you think of when you think of a Gears of War game?
Gears is definitely.
What are the inherent traits of a Gears of War game?
Dom!
Dom is one of the inherent traits I think about is very much the glorification of shooters.
Gorn.
It is to a certain extent Gorn. I mean, in Gears of War, you shoot someone in the head with a sniper rifle, the head blows up. You shoot someone with a bolt torque, there's quite a bit of damage. Earlier shooters, it applies less when you're looking at laser weapons because, designed not to spill blood. Laser burns and all that. But in that situation, it very much Gornified the genre because suddenly bullets did do a huge amount of damage.
It is very meaty and visceral. That's probably one of my favourite parts about the gameplay. It's just everything feels so impactful.
You feel powerful.
Yeah,
and also chunky.
You feel chunky. Speaking of chunky, going back to the Gorn idea was before Gears of War 2 came out, they were showing off some of the tech, and do you remember the meat cube that they showed off?
No, I personally don't.
So, I think this highlights very well the Gorn aspect of it. So Cliff Blazinski was showing off it was a giant cube of flesh, and it was astounding and horrifying and disgusting and beautiful and very much, and it just something that if they spend the amount of effort to come up with that and highlight that, I think that's very telling of what Gears of War is about.
It's a series that's also brought into the fore. I mean, Halo did it as well with the energy sword and to a later point the gravity hammer, but Gears of War really brought home the idea of melee combat. It's not just pistol whipping and killing someone. You are literally beating something to death with the butt of your gun. You are chainsawing something in half. If you pick up a butcher's knife,
so it's not clean. It's
you are chopping into something. You're not cutting it in half in one blow. You are chopping something to death.
Yeah,
it's really visceral combat. It was perhaps an evolution that shooters needed to make, at least in terms of some shooters. Some shooters don't need to be like that, some shooters do, but it was definitely an evolution of shooters that has happened and has really influenced, I think, quite a few games since then. It's really brought out the brutality in the genre.
Yeah. I'd actually like to ask Alex, what do you think from an art perspective? What do you think defines Gears in that way?
Well, this has actually been a topic of discussion in a couple of my classes, and obviously one thing that really stands out as a landmark, almost art decision, would be the way that the detail loads in. It goes from this hazy screen, blurred vision whenever you start a level, and then everything boots in individually. Like, what actually caused that was the limitations of what they were trying to do, and that the engine at the time, the state of it at the time couldn't allow it to boot everything in at the same time, so it had to boot it in texture by texture. But everyone remembers it for going from this blurry state and then loading in the next texture and then building up the levels of detail until you've got a nice crisp picture in front of you.
So do you?
Sorry.
So do you think it's more that's the bug that defines Gears?
I think that's certainly one of the bugs that defines Gears. I mean, there's plenty of glitches that go with roadie running, which defines Gears when it comes to glitches.
Like that guy in New Vegas with the starter guy, you remember, and his head spins round as you're talking to him. No one else see that?
No one else.
No.
There was in about a third of the copies of New Vegas at launch, the character that gave you your introductory tutorial would randomly have his neck snap off in the first conversation and his head rotate 360 degrees whilst still speaking to you.
Oh, I love it when character models just die completely.
Die
at the basic level, not in a gameplay sense.
It is hilarious. One of the things that stuck with me in terms of Gears of War is the use of weather effects to create atmosphere and drive the story. Like the very idea that in the first Gears game it starts raining in one of the levels, and then later on in that level it turns into it's Razor Hail, isn't it?
Razor Hail in the second game.
It's Nemesis in the first game, is it?
First game it's Krill, I think they use quite a lot.
Yeah.
You have to go between the patches of light.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of story integration into a shooter.
So it's very much it's a sense that it's not only you're not fighting just the enemies, you're fighting the environment as well.
Yeah, and then while it's
a very hostile environment in every sense.
Yes, while that had been done and continues to be done in games such as the Elder Scrolls series and open world games particularly, where it is you fight the environment. In shooters, less so, because people tended to not like random encounters in shooters, particularly for the harder difficulties. I know I don't. I don't in some shooters like random encounters because they can it can screw you over, particularly if the game works off a checkpoint system and you can't autosave every 2 steps, because you can be almost through a section, about to finish it, and then just get blindsided by something you didn't see coming. A la Velociraptor from Jurassic Park. You just turn your head for 1 second.
One, Trespasser was a terrifying game and simulated that perfectly, despite being broken as all hell. 2, they're not random encounters; they're scripted. The Krill.
Yeah, they were very scripted.
I know what you mean, but
they were scripted and signalled beforehand most of the time as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I was about to say, working those into the story is a good idea, as opposed to having them just pop out of nowhere and screw you over. Working them into a storyline narrative of fighting the environment is a good idea.
Okay then. Anything else that defines the series? Anything else anyone wants to ask?
This constant theme where we discussed it already. This constant theme where no matter how bad things get, they can still get worse. That is very much a theme that goes throughout all the Gears games. Like from oh god, my memory for the first game is terrible. Where they're right at the end of the first game, where they're fighting. What's his name? General Ram. That's the one. They're fighting Ram on the train. The train goes into the hole. Launches the torpedoes that were supposedly save everyone. And then no, that's like one tiny bit of one hive. It's it's insignificant by comparison. And it gets worse. And then much later on, where Dumbledore kills Snape. The Locust killed Dom. They're finally about to escape the area, and then Dom dies.
I think that's symptomatic of a thing about that sort of characterizes the series, but they don't go all the way with it. And that's the idea of it's the trope of anyone can die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the series sort of half embraces it, but then doesn't embrace it embraces it fully with the Carmine brothers, and the first game has it a lot more than the later games. But
You reckon?
well, in the first game, the other two members of your squad get killed off, and then you meet up with Baird and Cole, who have lost members of their squad. You wanted to
A
jump
couple of
in?
points, yeah. One, it's really very much not anyone can die. Lieutenant Kim, I want to say the guy's name
Lieutenant
is?
Kim,
Yeah,
and-
he's there to die. He's
Yeah.
there so Phoenix can get a promotion. Carmine, there to die. The Carmines in the later games, there to die.
The Carmines.
We're going to call them Carmines just to
And
Please don't call them
what's his
Carmines.
case?
They're
Even
Carmines.
Dom,
Oh.
it's not a case of anyone can die.
No.
Dom was, I mean, he wasn't set up to die, but it was
We all saw
always
it
a
coming.
serious. Well, I'd speak for yourself, but I never see plot twists.
He
coming.
became a dead seed.
What was the other thing I was going to say? About the light mass bomb at the end of the first game. It's not that it wipes out a tiny proportion. It wipes out a huge amount. It kills a lot of things. It wipes out the krill. It kills a huge amount of locust. They commit genocide.
They do come back, though.
Yeah, that's the point. Is
So-
they've committed genocide for nothing. It buys them a couple of months when it was supposed to be salvation.
I think I disagree with it. The point I was trying to make with the anyone can die thing is it the first game almost it suggests the idea that anyone can die, but then doesn't follow through on it. It sort of swerves because you've got the two main characters who survive throughout the entire game, and of course Anya and Baird and Cole and other characters like that. They survive throughout the entire games. I mean,
Who dies who has screen time, though? Kim and Carmine both get killed within like the first hour and a half of the game. It doesn't imply that people...
Please call them Carmine, for God's sake.
okay,
They call them Carmine in the game. Call them by their name.
Your face calls them by their name.
It's just it almost seems to suggest it because you pick up all these cog tags of people who have died. I mean, you pick up all these cog
But again,
tags.
that's not implying that anyone can die. That loads of games do that. Anyone can die is okay. Game of Thrones is anyone can die. It's a system where they allow you to grow attached to a character, and then they say, you know what, no plot armor. Gears doesn't have that.
No, I'm not suggesting it does, particularly not in the later games. It's just at the start, it seemingly suggests that before moving away from it. That's just my interpretation of it suggests it.
But how? You can have characters die, and it doesn't mean everyone's vulnerable to death. It doesn't even suggest it.
No, but in that kind of world, in that kind of setting, when players who have been introduced as quite prominent characters do get cut off, it does suggest, it starts to suggest it and then moves away from it. It's perhaps not a trope that's there. I just thought.
So, speaking of the world and the setting, I think we'll get away from they're having a slap fight.
Fisticuffs.
So speaking of the setting itself, so the world of Serra, I think it's definitely a world defined by war.
Well, it's a world that's got its name as an anagram
Yeah.
of Ares, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that says everything.
Ares backwards, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Ares backwards. So, I mean, everything seems to be geared towards war. Atmosphere, culture, architecture, colour palettes, especially. It all seems to just complement each other and bring about this sense of doom and gloom. I know that you were talking about the environmental effects just now, Ben.
Yeah, it is a very atmospheric world, and it has been criticised for being, it's just bolt gun grey, dirt brown, depressing shades of off-white,
Yeah.
with the occasional muzzle flash to light it up. But in that setting, it's going to be like that. It's an art style that is perhaps overdone in gaming, but it's an art style that in this case works.
I think it was a very early use of the art style in the first Gears.
It was, yeah. And it's an art style that doesn't particularly lend itself to a much more upbeat game. I mean, say what you will about Gears, it's not a particularly upbeat series. That is completely unupbeat. It's a very downbeat series, I'm saying. But basically, the aesthetic lends itself to the setting very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, but like if you look at it, if you look at the colours in the game, you could quite easily have colour picked most of that palette off an actual corpse. I mean, you've got these dark, muddy browns for the blood, and then you've got these green, bone-like colours for the locust, which could quite easily, be rotting skin or whatever. The whole thing is the colour palette works together to create a world that is the colour of death at the end of the day. Like, I can't think of many times in the series where they break from that, but when they do, it is quite jarring. Like, it's meant to be. But for example, when you're on, what's the name of the Azura? When you're in Azura, there's a lot of very rich greens. I believe there's some quite light blues in a couple of areas as well. But that's the sort of contrast you need to break it up a little bit. Those are there to represent where they were in the past and where they could have been had this not happened. The idea is the color palette is very much there to set a tone and to give it a much more full-bodied feeling, because everything's kind of working together to create this sense of death.
Yeah, I really like that idea that it's built from the colours of a corpse.
I'd agree with you definitely on that, particularly a bit in the second game where it's just before the Berserker comes in the second game, where they're walking through, I believe it's an abandoned railway station, and it's all overgrown with greenery and life, and you're looking around, and there's no enemies around for quite some time, and you're looking around, and it's this really bright, airy space covered in greenery, and it's this little oasis of hope. And then smash through a wall comes a Berserker, and you're immediately forced to run downstairs into a dank tunnel.
Yeah, so that could be used to show just the effects that the war's having on the planet.
Yeah, wherever hope springs, death is quickly there to stamp the boot in. Stamp the boot in, put the boot in.
Stamp that boot.
Stamp that boot.
It's also presumably because Unreal's Unreal finds it a lot easier to render browns and cities and things than it does anything organic. It's not a bad thing, playing to its strengths, but yeah.
I think they improved upon that towards, especially the third game, they used quite a lot.
Yeah, but at the start, when they're developing Gears 1, it's just not what the engine's made for, as far as I'm aware.
Ewan, I'd just like to interject there. The engine doesn't really give a shit about colour. I'll be totally honest with you. As somebody who works with it doesn't care about colour. It's literally just the way that they've built the game. It's what started to work together. And they've just, when they were building the scenery, I imagine it's a case more that when they were putting it together, that's the sort of thing they started getting. So they started capitalising on that. It's not a case that the engine cares about colour, because it doesn't.
It's a lot easier to build a static, mainly grey wall than it is to build a life-size, vibrant tree, for instance, that has to take bullet marks and such like. So it's generally a lot.
It's a simpler place to create and render. Basically.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I think that's more of an artistic decision rather than based on the constraints of the engine. It takes far more resources to put foliage in, which is, the whole basis for the infinite detail engine or something like that. But it doesn't mean that it can't do it. I mean, Bulletstorm is, the successor, I suppose, in many ways, to Gears of War, but it still does a good job with foliage. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Games engines, it was an artistic decision, in my opinion, for them to go the way they did.
As I recall, Bulletstorm is also mostly dust and things.
It is mostly dust. There are some green areas. You could analogize it to the series as a whole, where in the first game they're very much within a city, within a dust bowl. And in the third game they go across the sea to an island, which is a far different ecology and environment in itself.
So you think the atmosphere of the game came about, especially the first game, came about because of limitations?
I wouldn't just say limitations. I would say limitations with time, possibly, and limitations with time coupled with a wanting to create a setting that was very much focused on the war and the combat without being. Because often games, you can create a beautiful skybox with soaring cities and all that. But then if you want to look at that and explore it, and then you have to be railroaded through this very, very linear series of corridors, you're going to get annoyed.
So I think it plays well into the colour palette, but also the architecture, I'd say, contributes very well to the atmosphere.
There's definitely something where you can give 40k as an influence, because the architecture, I mean...
The high Gothic.
Steel, rock, glass, high Gothic.
Yeah.
It is somewhat its own, but it's also that...
High Gothic mixed with the Roman for the statues influence. It's
just everything is incredibly overbuilt, and it looks like it could just withstand the next millennium.
Well, yeah, it's like I don't know if you've played it, but I know personally I've played Space Marine. I think you've played Space Marine,
like the first level.
Well, the first level or so. But that's got it's got quite a good interpretation of a Forge world, in that it's a city built on a city built on a city built on a city. It's like you say, the city seems very overbuilt. They've really started to pile things up and massively inflate the cities.
Yeah.
From what I remember of Space Marine, I think Gears probably did a lot better of representing 40k's architectural style than Space Marine.
Well, it's less...
I mean, granted I only played the first level.
It's a Forge world, it's not meant to be beautiful in architecture.
No, it doesn't need to be beautiful, just the style.
Alex, what do you say about the architecture of it?
I would definitely agree that the architecture has taken a huge draw on Gothic as architecture, late Victorian stuff, early Edwardian, and then also, definitely there's a lot of draw from Warhammer 40k's universe and the way that everything's sort of laid out. The cityscapes do remind me personally a lot of the sort of thing that's described throughout much of 40k's fluff.
There seems to be a lot of concrete and glass and steel. You don't really see much wood in it, I've noticed.
No, definitely. The only wood you really see is in stuff that you can dive over.
But none of the main buildings seem to have much wood at all.
No, yeah, definitely. I think that's a case of I think it's that the buildings are meant to represent the characters in many ways, in that they are supposedly unshakable. But when the damage on the buildings, I think, is more. I'm about to get deep here.
That's fine. Get deep.
I'm going to go really deep. I think the damage to the buildings is less to do with the physical stature of the buildings and more a metaphor for the emotional damage that's going on towards the characters. But otherwise, the buildings and the characters are one and the same. They are these big, burly, concrete objects that move through the landscape. Obviously, the buildings are more static, but the buildings roaming through the landscape while the characters stand still. I think the damage to the buildings is very much a reflection of what's happening to the characters rather than what's happening to the world.
Yeah, and as well as that, it's a nice contrast to see the Cog architecture and the Locust architecture underground.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Everything down there really is moving.
Yeah,
because you've got new tunnels being carved all the time.
Yeah, the Locust architecture, you only ever, but I do like the way the Locust architecture the amount of Locust architecture you see changes, and then it adapts as you discover the Locust are deeper than just we are inhuman monsters here to eat your brains. You as it may apply. Because when you get to the capital city, there's that huge palace that's sparkling miles high, built into a stalactite.
It actually looks quite fragile.
I think it's a stalactite. It's fragile, but it looks visually visually impressive. It's very bright. It's very it's very show-offy. It's like, here is the light of the world. This is the dominant culture of the Hollows.
I just think it's very, very interesting to see that, as it's very precariously built over a lake of emulsion. It's kind of emphasises the difference between the Cog and the Locusts.
It does, yeah. I just think it's a very visual symbol of how we're meant to view the Locust and how that changes, as in Locust the brute beast, and then you discover they can build something like that, even if it is precarious and on the edge of working. You know, as you say, it can collapse into a lake of emulsion, which would be bad.
Yeah, probably.
Ewan,
any thoughts
to the architecture?
No, I'm good. I'm
not an architecture fan.
I said my piece.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But if you want me to find something to disagree with, then
I think we'll be
you are very good at disagreeing with things. So, the audio as well. I didn't mention the audio before, but I thought I'd bring it up. I think that's a very good a good way to emphasise a few things in the atmosphere. Are you guys fans of the soundtrack?
Personally, I don't really know much about the soundtrack myself.
No, I can't say I know too much about it. Like, I was thinking, if you're going to go through the Foley, then that's a strong part of every game. The fact that you've got so much interactive, your sound is 3D within a game. Your sound is as 3D as the environment. But no, I can't say I know much about the soundtrack. You know, it obviously worked, because, it engaged me for the entire thing, and I'm sure it engaged you guys. But no, I can't say I know much about it otherwise.
I'd agree with you on the Foley. I mean, the sounds really do sound like they should. I mean,
again, they're impactful.
Yeah, when you fire off a boom shot, it feels like you're firing a cluster bomb grenade launcher. And when you fire a
the
sniper,
guns.
It feels like you're blowing someone's head off.
Yeah, the guns.
Well, yeah.
I think the sound that goes with the guns in particular is a huge selling point has always been a huge selling point for the game. They feel big. They feel chunky. They do definitely give you that feel of power. That's where the Foley for Gears of War definitely separates itself from a lot of the rest of the market.
Actually, point on Foley, the melee combat sounds when you hit someone with the butt of the gun, it sounds like you're hitting something.
Yeah, sounds like you're hitting a meat cube.
Pretty much, it does sound like you are literally beating something into a pile of flesh.
You are hitting a meat cube. None of them have any bones. You're hitting a meat cube with a gun.
In reality, yes, but
So this is probably where I'd come in to have a talk then, because I personally actually really enjoyed the Gears of War soundtrack.
This is your moment.
This is indeed my moment.
Shall we hum something thematic for you?
I feel
well, if you could oh god, I can't speak. If you could hum "Hope Runs Deep," then
it's the Gears 1 soundtrack.
It's the Gears 2 soundtrack. It is actually the Gears 2 main theme, which was so good that they remixed it and reused it a lot in Gears 3. So
the Mjolnir mix from Halo.
Yeah, and that Mad World song as well. That was really
Mad
nice.
World as well. We'll get on to that.
Reconciliation suite, you bastard.
But yeah, I picked out Hope Runs Deep because it pulls in a lot of the elements that the soundtrack as a whole has. So it's it makes a good use of a male choir, which.
Is it a male voice choir, or is it a male voice choir a la Welsh music, or is it a very deep sort of?
It's a very deep sort of
bassy.
Yeah. So it's very
exactly like that.
Pump your chest out, big masculine choir.
So it's very, very sort of almost military.
Yeah,
military tradition, uplifting music of forward the troops.
Definitely that as well. It's
praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
Well, it introduces things like there's a lot of percussion in it as well, and there's a lot of trumpets, which
more military.
Yeah, I've been listening to the soundtrack all day. I've been noticing just the sheer amount of trumpets that they've got going through it.
Must just really love trumpets.
They do. It's really good.
Something about this song isn't Gearsy enough. Let's add more trumpets.
But it's very much it is very, very military and very. You get the feel of like a slow progress, like mechanical, like cogs.
So it's a march.
It's a march, definitely. And then you've also got elements of what I guess might be the locust, which is just very like string instruments, very slow, very
sort of slow,
very,
ponderous staccato
It's not
staccato noises.
It's not got the same sense as like an inevitable march. It's more of just a looming.
So there's an overlay of trumpets as this very prominent theme within it. So the melody is mostly trumpets, but I presume then the harmony would be a lot of strings, so symbolising the overlay of the cogs on top, and then beneath is the locust. It's less noticeable, but it's still very much there.
And it's very good to notice that in the first Gears, the soundtrack it doesn't have so many of the locusty elements in there. It is very much just a straight percussion and trumpets and mild male choir in there, and it's good to see a theme flowing through. Where in the second game, the locusts come out in force, and you get a lot more of their elements. And then the third game, going on towards that, it brings back the cog percussion.
It would make sense, especially as the attitudes towards the locust shift. As I mean, they're always there in the first one, but in the second one they do, as you say, come out in force.
Yeah,
and really become
a
threat beneath the city. But it's an evolution of musical. It's an evolution of musical styles, which is always good within the series, particularly if they build off a good piece of music.
Yeah.
Again, haven't heard it, so
I think you'd be.
I mean, I probably have given up.
You have had it, but it's always been in the background, which isn't so much of a bad thing for a game. You don't want it to be overpowering.
The use of the Mad World, because I know it wasn't used for number 2 as an advertising thing. There's that.
It was used in the first.
It was used in
probably
the first ever advert for it, where he.
Yeah, the first official trailer, I think.
Yes, where Marcus is in the street, dives to the window, and he's up against a corpse. So he just starts blindly firing.
Yeah, very first trailer of the very first game.
Well, I've seen the very first trailer, and that's a different trailer. You're thinking of. I think it was the second trailer for the first game, where they redid it entirely, and they were like. Basically, the first trailer for the first game, at least the one I've been shown in class, was very much like all the old PS2 trailers where, things can strafe, and things can move forward, and look at that guy screaming. It's really painful to watch.
Yeah, but the very first one, Mad World trailer was probably the one that nailed down what Gears was going to be.
The one that really stuck in people's minds.
Yeah,
definitely.
It was iconic. I think it shifted a lot of consoles.
I know. Personally, when I first saw that trailer, I was I was like, "Wow, that looks like a game I want to play."
Yeah,
and I know they've reprised it for the adverts for the third game.
They used it for,
but I don't think they used it for the second one, did they?
They used. Well, talking about the Mad World track itself, they used it for Dom's death in the third game.
They did use it for that, and they also used it. They used it for the cinematic trailer. The storyline trailer for the third game going into it, where he's running through a field of bodies from the.
No, that's a different track, but it's very much it's in the same sort of style of it. It's in the main trilogy. They used that juxtaposition where you'd have like a muted, all the violence would be muted. And then you'd have the soundtrack over it, which would be something completely different, like a slow, sad melody over that.
I always thought the storyline trailer for the third one had Mad World as the soundtrack, because I remember
the trailer didn't. The adverts in the UK definitely did, for at least a bit, so I remember them too. Because it's Mad World over the Pompeii place, or is it Char?
Char, yeah. It's very
impactful as all hell.
Yeah, I mean the trailers seem to just be building on the idea of like a hopelessness, one after the other.
Yeah, in the third one, he's running through Char.
He's running through
what
is basically Pompeii.
Yeah,
and it's very much a sense of just showing. I suppose like the impact of the war,
well,
and sort of just showing the impact that the supposedly good guys have had on the world as well as the bad guys.
Oh yeah, it's an action that was taken by the guys who are meant to root for, and it's an entire area that is just ash.
Yeah,
People were flash fossilized where they stood.
Are you really meant to root for the cog?
that's why I say supposedly good guys.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think. I think they're just the player avatars, and you auto-identify with your avatar. I don't think they're ever really portrayed as being good.
I think you're
meant to root for them in the terms of these guys are bad, but everything else is worse.
You're going to love our later topic, but yeah, just to round off the trailers. The trailer for Gears 2, going back a bit, was. Do you remember the "I Have a Rendezvous with Death" trailer?
No, I didn't see that one.
I watched all the videos.
So that trailer, do you remember it, Alex?
I'm not sure. I literally just YouTubed the Mad World trailer. I forgot how chilling that is actually to watch. Sorry, which trailer are we talking about? Gears of War 2.
It's Gears of War 2. You're going to watch it now.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch it now.
It's
a really good poem. I'd never heard it before.
It's Marcus Phoenix. It's
his dad. Isn't it? Isn't it his dad?
Is it Adam or Marcus Phoenix?
Sorry, it's Adam talking. Not. It doesn't sound like.
It's Marcus Phoenix walking down the hallway while his dad.
Oh,
right. I think it's his dad. It may just be. It may just be
just another gruff guy.
Gruff, gravelly.
To be fair, you could very easily get confused
well.
between most of the characters in that series for people who have just sandpapered their throat.
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but I can only do Marcus's voice. I can't do the other gravelly voices. They are very different gravelly voices.
Very.
Okay?
But yeah, it's Marcus Phoenix walking very ponderously and reluctantly towards a battle, and you got a reading of "I Have a Rendezvous with Death" over that.
Who's that?
Which it's a poem by Alan Seeger,
okay.
and it was written during World War One. He died very shortly after.
I
in
had
song.
no idea it might be. It's sort of along the lines of Dulce et Decorum Est.
Yeah.
It's
very chilling.
I can imagine it would be.
It's not really, because that one's really. Okay, I say that one's
Maybe
really
not.
bitter. The only reading of it I've ever heard is Brian Blessed, and he's really pissed off during it.
Yeah,
it's really good.
No,
I suppose the tone of it.
Dulce et Decorum Est is very much. This is pointless.
Yeah,
we are out here. We have been left here to die.
Well, I Have a Rendezvous with Death is more. This is inevitable.
Yeah,
pretty much.
That comes through in Dulce et Decorum Est as well, because the line basically translates how glorious it is to die for your country.
It's not sarcastic though. It's not bitter.
No, it is a very sarcastic.
No, what
line.
I'm saying is this one isn't sarcastic or bitter. Dulce et Decorum Est is.
I suppose,
Dulce
et Decorum Est.
I don't speak Latin.
Yeah.
I don't speak Latin at all.
Neither, but
yeah, I thought that was They had very good marketing schemes. The Gears series.
Whoever licensed Mad World needs to be paid many hundreds of thousands of lancers.
I'm pretty sure he has been paid quite. He's probably received some very, very handsome.
Probably
revenue from
it was a very good, very effective trailer.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, I like it how the marketing gave you a good sense of the world before you even played it.
Oh, that rendezvous one I've never seen before.
No, I don't think I saw it either.
No, I have. Yeah.
So initial impressions from you, Alex. What did you think of it?
It definitely captures a lot of what happens in the second one and just how much shit goes down. Like the opening of the game, I think is it the end of the first chapter, start of the second chapter, where you're fighting in those caverns. It captures that perfectly, definitely. However, there's only so much of Dom moping on the floor that I can take.
Well, yeah, but if I just get the tone of the poem.
Remember that was before Gears 2 came out, so that was the very first instance of Dom moping on the floor.
Yeah.
No, in fact, there's another Gears of War 2 trailer I found just beforehand, and which I also hadn't seen, and that also had Dom moping on the floor.
Dom moping
Dom,
aside,
you depressing twat.
Dom moping aside, it does seem to capture the theme of the game. If I have read the idea, because it's called "I Have a Rendezvous with Death," so and as you said, it's about the inevitability. They do go down into the camp. They do go down into the hollow, It is very much what they expect to be a one-way trip. They are setting off to fight what they think is the ultimate evil.
Yeah.
And they don't expect to come back. You know, they're going down there on those rail things. I don't think there's a return function on those. It's very much setting off into the darkness to fight death himself.
Very powerful.
I think the interesting thing about that trailer is the fact that it's probably Adam Phoenix supposed to be reading it. If you listen to it, it's really...
We are going to get so much shit for when this is wrong.
You know what? It's okay. Official pronouncement. It's definitely Adam Phoenix reading it. We edited the
and if
Wikipedia entry.
it wasn't, it would be far better if he was.
Yes, he should have been, because it applies so very heavily to the third game. It reads like a mantra, like the type of thing it would be going over and over again in his head. It seems so much more relevant to him and to the third game than it does to the second, to be honest.
Well, it has relevancy to both, because, like we said, the second game is all about you go off on this seemingly one-way trip.
Listen to the wording of the poem.
I will be.
It is so ridiculous. The rendezvous with death, yeah, but it factors so well into Phoenix's dad and how he views his role in the war, because he sees himself as culpable for pretty much everything. Partially because he kind of is. Not entirely. It wouldn't, but very much so.
So, do you want to get on to a character discussion?
Cool.
I think we should.
I think we should discuss the deep and well-loved character of the Coltrane and all the wonderful characterization that he has.
Right. So we'll just dive straight into it. Delta Squad. So Delta Squad as a whole. First question I'd like to ask, because I can't really puzzle it out myself. Do you think the main trilogy is the story of Marcus or Delta Squad, or the story of Cogs, or the story of humanity, possibly?
I'd say it's more about the story of humanity as viewed through a set of protagonists. Because as much as he is supposedly the hero, he's the protagonist, Marcus Phoenix is not entirely likeable. He's a very rough, abrasive man who doesn't really have a lot of time for really anything.
He's basically if you could give a rock arms and legs to throw him into battle.
And that's perhaps a stylistic choice by the guys who wrote him, as he's a mirror to project yourself onto. He's like Master Chief. He's given a blank face. Okay, fine, he's not like Master Chief.
No, make your point. I'll disagree with you after you're done speaking.
He's one facet of the hero of 1,000 faces. He's the guy you project. Shut up with your face. I'm not saying anything. Right, in any case, he's someone to project onto, even though he's not. I will slap you silly. Right. I'm not even going to make my point anymore.
You should podcast this.
Oh.
Very heated. Ewan, what would you say about this? I know that you were disagreeing silently via hand waving.
Yeah, he's got nothing to rebuttal, so he can't make a point.
Yep, no, Benji's screwed us all over.
I've taken my bricks and gone home. As I was saying, humanity's struggle, viewed through the eyes of a protagonist who's not particularly likeable, doesn't have very many character traits. The other characters have character arcs around him, i.e. Dom searching for his wife, Baird doesn't really have one. I mean, he's very attached to Jack, but other than that, he doesn't really go anywhere. And then Cole, obviously, very much so in the third game, where he realises he's getting older. You know, he's very much losing the thing that makes him the Coltrane.
Well, he's not good. He's trying to be living up to his past glory for the whole series.
Pretty much, but in the third game, it really hits home that he is getting older. He can't just rely on brute strength and physical prowess for much longer, because he is slowing down. At one point, if he keeps trying to fight like that, he's gonna die, because there'll be something stronger than him. He'll hit a wall he can't just bulldoze through.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Marcus Phoenix doesn't have a character arc. Other characters around him do, so that's why I think it's more of a struggle for it's humanity story. Ewan?
I wouldn't say that. Well, one, I wouldn't compare Phoenix and Chief, because Phoenix has a personality. Chief, as of Halo 4, he kind of does. Before that, not so much.
Blank slate, blank face. Yeah.
Whereas Phoenix does, he's an arsehole, as you said. But he's got a story arc. He's got things that are important to him. Yeah, he's got a story arc. He's got things that are important to him. And the big thing is that. The big thing is that one of those is Dom. So his story is really him and Dom, and how he doesn't really give a shit about anything else as long as Dom's still alive, and then to a lesser extent after that, as long as his father's still there. The only time you ever see him really make a connection with anyone ever is after both of them are dead, and Anya tries to... It's kind of implied that maybe it's romantic, or it might just be a friend thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit in the air.
Yeah, but she's trying to be there for him. And that tiny gesture of Marcus, the big, completely non-subtle man closing his hand, is the only time he ever really shows give a damn for anyone apart from Dom or his dad.
Well, that's a very good point. Just as Dom's dying, I suppose, and there's explosions going on where Marcus hides and he's curled up in the fetal position. So he's looking vulnerable at that point.
He's such a ridiculously vulnerable man.
Really?
Well, he is. He's got 2 anchor points in his life, and he doesn't give a shit about anything else. There's a point in the first game where they find a stranded survivor. They find a stranded survivor. And you know how freaked out they get when one another's in trouble and they need people to come and help. This guy gets dragged down a hole. They don't even blink. They show no verbal response. They never attempt to rescue him. They just listen to him being sort of gradually struggling for about 5 seconds. Then he starts to die as he gets ripped apart. And they're just like, no, well, fuck it, he's gone.
This is true. He does he finds the bodies of his former comrades, other squads of cogs, and they don't appear to really care that much. I mean, they pick up the cog tag in the idea of they were soldiers, we should honour their memory, but in terms of, we never get an idea that they knew them personally. Like,
because Phoenix is not representative of humanity. He's not human. He's somewhat superhuman, but at the very least, he isolates himself from the rest of the species.
He's a brick.
He may have agency and a personality, but he's
a brick.
He's a brick.
He's a washing machine with arms and legs that happens to have several guns bolted to it.
Yeah, but the point that Ewan is making is that despite his outlook on life, he is... I'd never really thought of him as an extremely vulnerable character.
I'd agree with him.
He's. I mean, what was that? The article you linked before this, with it was an article comparing Gears of War
to the Iliad.
To the Iliad. I wouldn't necessarily agree with almost anything they said, but they did pick out Achilles as a character, and he's kind of similar to that. In that he's.
He's the shining warrior on the hill. He's the ace in the hole in this Achilles in terms of the Greek army, the cogs in terms of Marcus Phoenix. Because Marcus always gets the job done, but they've got that tiny vulnerability. Yeah. That one thing.
Yeah, they could just shatter them.
It is unfair. That was the thing I was thinking of. But then it's unfair to compare him to Achilles, because Achilles is something of a whiny dick a lot of the time. And Marcus isn't. He's the opposite. Achilles is overinvested. Marcus is underinvested. He doesn't care about... Because the species for him is 2 people.
Yeah.
He's got a personality, but as you say, maybe he doesn't have an arc.
He doesn't really, because, I mean, the 2 defining character moments for him come both in the 3rd game. One, when he tries... Even when, there's a tanker of emulsion fuel exploding in front of him, and he's trying to run into the fire to pull Dom out of it.
Yeah.
Can't do it and curls up in the fetal position, seemingly unable to. What? No, he's trying to run into the fire to stop it.
No, he's fetal position once the fetal position until the fire goes. Then he goes to run for it, and it's Anya and one of the other ones tries to restrain him. They're trying to drag him back, and he's alternating between trying to fling them off and actively trying to drag them in there with him.
Yeah, and then the second Marcus Phoenix character moment comes when he's finally found his father again, and he's dead.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a character.
He doesn't have an arc. He
does have a character. He just doesn't have an arc. Yeah, it's kind of harsh. It's like the rest of the game. Everyone else loses things. People die. People get hurt. Characters go down. Not everyone, but certain predestined characters die. And Phoenix looks like he's going to make it out okay, gets shot down, then looks like he might make it out with at least something, and then gets shot down. He's committed such terrible crimes, And it's like, nope, no scot-free for you.
But I see what you mean though about him having no character arc as well, because he doesn't even react when the very pivotal moment for Dom, when his character arc is all about trying to find his wife, and then the massive come down of having to shoot her in the head. I mean, he does it with a bolt hole, man. That's kind of like, you could have quite easily done it with a less messy version.
Yeah, you could have found a smaller gun.
There's a euthanizing your wife, and then there's splattering her brain all over your front.
You could
And then there's
argue...
euthanizing her and everyone behind her.
Pretty much.
That's the brutality of war, Ben. That's the brutality of war.
Okay, it's the brutality of war.
In Dom's defense, it's a lot harder to empathize with a headless corpse. If you can see your wife's face after just having shot her... I mean, yeah, it's funny, but it's also like, I can see, and it's the first weapon at hand, he wants it done, he needs her to stop suffering. Yeah. I don't like Dom, or at least I didn't before, that moment.
No,
but, yeah.
I can see your point there, but Dom from that point on, he goes from a man driven by one desire to find his wife, and, his children are dead, I think. It's very clearly made out that they're dead, and he's trying.
I think he had 2 children and they died.
Yep.
So he's just trying to. And when he pulls the trigger, his whole character changes from wanting to find his wife to just wanting to die. He will try and help Marcus as he can, but he just wants to die. He doesn't want to live anymore because he's just had to kill the one person he loved most in the world.
Well, hopefully that wouldn't happen to Marcus after the events of 3.
Oh, Dom.
No,
I loved you so.
No, but.
It could
Marcus's
genuinely happen.
relationship to Dom doesn't seem to change. He doesn't empathise with him at any point. He doesn't sit down and really. He's Dom's best friend, but he's not there. He can't be there for him. He just doesn't seem to have the heart to be open up to Dom.
So Dom, how's it going? Everything okay?
In a slightly less roundabout way.
That's what I thought you meant when you said about I didn't realise you meant Marcus shooting himself. I thought you meant like Marcus walking in after Gears 2 and saying, Dom, I'm sorry, I can't see you like this, and just shooting him.
That would have been an opening for this.
Oh, that would be.
But it actually goes a little bit back to
man.
What is it with you people are using bolt-hawks?
Why does everyone keep shooting everyone else in the head? Sorry. It actually goes a little bit back to what Whitey was saying with the architecture. Is the characters as representative of the architecture of Sarah, which is deeply scarred. That's kind of Marcus. He's retreated. He's as scarred as the architecture. It's all just ruins in his head, with the scattered remnants of what was once a sense of empathy and humanity skittering around.
Yeah, there's a shell. It's extremely thick shell, but it's a
shell
Are we,
nonetheless.
What we're trying to say here, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the architecture is a metaphor for everyone, and Marcus is a metaphor for the architecture.
Yes, that's what we mean.
This Marcus.
I know what we could describe him as. Brittle.
Yes.
He gets punched so much, though.
Well, he's like
got more teeth than anything alive.
Personality-wise, brittle.
It's a good quote that comes from the Game of Thrones. Actually, it's describing Stannis. He's black iron. He'll break, but he'll never bend.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Up to the point of 3, he's never bent. He sets his mind on something and he will do it.
Yeah.
But then he breaks. His one thing that could make him break happens. He loses Dom, and then he loses all hope of ever finding his father alive and well.
I really hated the bit in Game of Thrones where Dom died and it made Stannis cry.
It was terrible.
It was so tragic.
Yeah.
Spoilers, by the way, for Game of Thrones as well.
That bit where Tyrion chainsawed the dragon in the face as well was also pretty good.
So we talked about Delta Squad. What about the supporting characters of the game? What about say Anya, and they do actually become main characters in. Well, they're main characters, but not in Delta Squad, and then they join Delta Squad in 3. So what about characters such as Anya and Dizzy and Ty and Kim and Carmine and Carmine and Carmine?
All the
Carmine.
I think
who actually been brought into a game.
How many people have been in Delta Squad?
Most of the Cog Army.
Most of the army. I don't want to be assigned to Delta Squad.
No, anything but that. Anything but
Please, at least wait for me to take off my helmet.
But there are quite a few. But that's it. The other characters aren't given arcs as the 3 characters of Delta Squad are, because they really don't get much screen time. Like the first 2 Carmine brothers die pretty damn early on. I mean, they're very
3 characters of Delta Squad. Dom, Marcus. Are we counting?
no. There's 4
Cole
characters
as
of Delta
the-
Squad, but 3 of them get arcs. Marcus doesn't get an arc; he just gets broken. We've established.
Oh,
that.
okay,
That's
sorry.
the
Sorry,
entire
yeah,
previous point.
my bad.
But
I forgot that bit of the
the other
conversation.
characters don't seem to get arcs much. I mean, you can see where the motivations come through for the later 2 Carmine brothers, because obviously Anthony Carmine, I don't really know what his character is. I can't really remember his character much. I mean, I guess he's youthful and hopeful.
He's the first to die.
I think Benjamin was the youthful and hopeful one. Anthony was just more of a let's get the job done. And
Yeah.
he's a bit
You
optimistic.
shit a
And then
sniper
Benjamin-
rifle.
To be honest,
Benjamin
Anthony didn't
wants-
really have much of a character because he
just
didn't
got
survive
shot.
that long.
Yeah, he just got shot in the head. Then Benjamin comes in and he's very youthful and hopeful, and he kind of wants to avenge his brother's death, sort of. And,
Yeah.
And then Clay comes in and is very, very.
Badass.
He's just more angry.
He's
About
just-
it. He just wants
more-
he wants to kill all Locust ever.
Well, to be honest, Clayton is more like the gear.
Pretty much.
He's everything that you see in a gear,
Yeah.
and just cranked to the max.
Pretty much. But there is also that thing of he wants all Locust to die ever, because they've taken both of his little brothers away from him.
Does he? Does he have any speaking lines? I don't know.
He does.
Clayton, he talks quite a lot.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I do not remember any of this.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
He likes
okay,
bacon.
continue.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Good to
Yeah.
know. I'll remember that for his birthday.
Yeah. But and then the
He
other
wanted to sell Sam at one point for bacon, I think.
Yeah, he does try and sell Sam for bacon. But the other characters around Delta Squad, I mean, Anya sort of gets developed, but not especially.
She has a little arc at the
She's a
end
little
where
arc.
it's kind of like, Phoenix, this is over, we have a tomorrow, and she has hope, and Phoenix is just like, no, world's over. It ended for me up there 5 minutes ago. You were there.
That would have been a hell of a way to cut the series if Anya's got hope for tomorrow, and then Phoenix literally just walks up to the edge of the tower and just drops.
Oh, that would be it.
Because it would render the
'cause that would be the
punishment
end of-
pointless. If Phoenix killed himself the instant it ended, it would feel.
I don't think Phoenix would necessarily kill himself, but puts himself in the way of being killed. Much like Dom, I suppose.
Well, no, I
he
would
would just kill himself.
I would have thought it would be an idea that he could kill himself at the end, because he'd look. If we particularly poignant, if there was a sunrise, he could see the sunrise, and you can see that there is a tomorrow for the world, because the Locusts are gone, the threat is over. But he's lost the 2 things that held him onto the world, and he
I suppose
only,
there's no
he
war
only really
anymore,
knew-
so he doesn't really
yeah,
have
he
a-
only really knows how to live.
Wow, you say there's
As-
no war anymore. It's from everything that's happened in the universe. It's
there's
easily
probably going to
possible
be-
that there's
going to be
another
another
war.
war.
Like
Yeah.
2 days
But
later.
he
Oh, God.
perhaps,
Seriously,
perhaps he doesn't want.
totally
he
a
doesn't
thing.
know how to live in the new world that's going to come out. So he wants. He just wants it over.
I could see maybe him topping himself later, but not immediately after his father's death. That's his world has gone from complete to over, finished, done, post-apocalyptic in the space of a couple of days. He's having trouble processing everything. He's not just going to walk off the tower.
Plus, what a buzzkill.
Yeah, I mean,
You guys,
that scene from the end of the IT crowd.
you know the last Carmine, the D Carmine. Can't remember the name.
He's
There's
never-
a 4th Carmine, but he's never really
revealed. He's the
never
oldest
revealed.
brother.
Yeah. Well, I've literally decided to Google him, and someone has a theory as to that he was in the games and who he was.
Dom.
No, not Dom, because that was Dominic
Dickish older
Santiago.
brother.
Dizzy?
Yeah. People think that Dizzy Wallin is actually a double barrel name. It's Dizzy Carmine Wallin,
I don't
as he
think
is
so.
older than the
Because
others.
Dizzy's.
Dizzy met Ben.
Yeah, they meet. And
Yeah.
Dizzy is way older than the others. Like, Dizzy is,
Yeah.
Well, Dizzy's meant to
be.
be the oldest, isn't he? Like,
Yeah, but there's being the oldest brother, and there's being the oldest by a good, 40 years.
Yeah, I think we can
True.
throw that out.
Yeah, that. Ignore
Dizzy,
that.
Dizzy's very much nothing more than a stereotype.
Pretty much.
There's nothing much to him.
A lot of the characters, though, outside of Delta Squad are stereotypes.
Yeah,
And perhaps
certainly.
that's all you need them to be, because they are just supporting characters. I mean, in more in-depth games where it's very, very character driven, you could have support characters having story arcs, and some supporting characters, more prominent ones, perhaps like Anya, do have story arcs.
Speaking of Anya, I think hers is an interesting one because there's been a lot of talk about Gears of War being a very masculine game. I don't think it would be much of an argument to say it is very much a masculine game. So how the women in Gears of War are treated is very interesting. Would you say that Anya's in Gears 3 when she becomes Gear, that she's being masculinized? Do you think that detracts from her character or adds to it?
I think she's become slightly masculinized. I don't think it detracts from the character because I think it's made very clear that when Anya becomes a Gear, it is a last ditch thing. It's like
to clarify,
they're running out of soldiers.
Sorry. To clarify, what do we mean by masculinized? As in just this being buffed up and made to look sort of hyper macho and generally muscly?
Well, the point in previous games we've seen her, this white uniform. She's not hugely bulky as the grey, white, whatever.
There's a big difference.
I know there's a big difference. In any case, she's not seen as this threatening presence, and then she puts on the cog armor in the third game and starts cutting people up with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
I think with the way they reacted to the masculinity thing was quite good because they did bring in a strong female character for the Gears 3 in the form of Sam. It did kind of just feel a bit forced. Like we get two new characters in Gears 3 in terms of Sam and I think it's Jason with that.
There's Jace. I think Jason was a character that was very big in the comics. And
they're both from the.
And then they brought him into the games. I must admit we're not really incredibly well read up on the extended universe.
The fluff is not something we are not.
So that's the purpose of this podcast. We're just going to talk about the games. So. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes.
But that's it. Say it's unfortunate. Weren't the books done by the nutter who did the latest Halo book?
I don't know. I'm not really going to talk about the quality of the books when I haven't really read them.
Yeah, it's not something we can make a judgment on. But in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the game characters, I think it was a good thing to introduce Sam and to a lesser extent Anya into the thing because it was seen as very much a madness world, but. I think in terms of the cog, almost there was a very good reason why you didn't see female soldiers. It was because the cog was basically just using them as baby machines.
Yeah, well, and I suppose that sort of it's why a lot of people, especially women who might play Gears of War, might get alienated.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it may build the universe, but. I think there is an argument to say that it's not an inherently sexist game because women are not told they're second-class citizens. It's just that women are too valuable to be sent out to the front lines because obviously
they do get sent out to the front lines. You have to volunteer for the birthing thing.
Okay, that derails my point. I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was...
It's as well, I think it's quite an offhand thing. It's either comic book exclusive or it's only mentioned in...
I think it's mentioned briefly in the games.
Yeah. But it's not as... It's slightly a big thing, but I think it's also the problem is the time frame for it is slightly screwed up. Any way you look at it, it could only really have been in its early stages. And with the cogs, on the one hand... Their sound bites are firmly male. On the other hand, in theory, they're all wearing helmets, and it's pretty well established that the armour doesn't actually alter your form at all, i.e. it doesn't emphasise the boobs.
That's what I very much liked about how Anya and Sam were portrayed.
Fuck yeah, non-sexualised female characters.
Oh yeah, it was good.
Let's just shoo Queen Mira under the mat for a moment there.
Yeah, but that said, you could make the argument that you can slightly sexualise Queen Mira because
she was quite sexualised.
Yeah, but it's very much as an idea.
Dominatrix kind of way.
Yeah, it's very much a dominance thing. It's that look at me.
Yeah,
I am almighty. It's like from 300 and 300 Rise of an Empire with the Persian Darius. Is it Xerxes or Darius? I can't remember which one they portray him as. It is Xerxes. Well, he's portrayed as the God King. You know, this 8-foot tall giant, sculpted body, hugely sexualized character. But it's in a very look at me, I am perfection way.
Yeah.
I think Mira's sexuality is done in that sort of sense, as opposed to you should desire this character.
She's dominating the men.
Pretty much.
I don't know if you guys have heard this, but while we're discussing this, I've been looking at various articles online. And, Callum, you've probably been in on this before, but Gears of War is no longer owned by Epic.
Yeah, I know.
It's People Can Fly, isn't it?
No, it's not People Can Fly, it's
Black Tusk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they, and Cliff Blazinski is actually, he doesn't want anything to do with it anymore either.
He didn't have anything to do with
Judgment
either, so that's not really too surprising. But
yeah, he just doesn't want, he says he doesn't want to be remembered for Gears of War, because he didn't want Gears of War to turn out how it was. Which is very interesting, if you think about it.
Really?
Well, if Cliff Blazinski...
Yeah, I think so.
I think everything I've read on him, he seems to be quite pleased with how it turned out.
Oh, no, the article I was just reading says that he's glad he's made a fun game, but at the end of the day, what he wanted was Band of Brothers with monsters, and that's how he pitched it, but what ended up happening was more Predator, where all the characters are more Schwarzenegger-like. That's how he actually thinks of it.
Well, that
where
sounds
you basically shoot fucking lizard men in the fucking face with fucking guns. That's his actual words.
Yeah, but that could be... He's one designer on a game that probably had quite a large team working on it.
Well, he was
the
the
lead designer.
He was the lead designer, but ultimately it might be he had a creative vision for it that wasn't shared by the people working with him, and he had to compromise in certain ways. No one likes compromising on something they see as very much
there were a lot of people involved in the team, so it's no surprise that things would get changed.
Yeah.
Going back to the characters though. So we talked about gender in Gears of War. What about other stereotypes? I know that Coltrane's.
Coltrane is very much the.
How do we approach this?
Well,
he's the Shaq of Gears of War.
But I mean, for a lot of the game, it's very, very sort of stereotype neutral. I mean, a lot of the Gears you can't actually see. You could make the argument that you can't really bring race or anything like that into it because you can't see a lot of the Gears' faces. Or indeed their skin, because a lot of them.
I think it's supposed to talk about the main characters.
Yeah,
so.
anyone with a character.
Yeah, but I mean,
stereotype.
To be fair,
this isn't the universe as a whole.
No, in terms of Delta Squad, there's 2 white guys, a Hispanic guy, and a black guy. So you got a fairly representative race range if you want to bring.
To be honest with Dom, we didn't see so much of a Hispanic. He didn't play it up so much as you see with Cole.
And Baird is still a stereotype of sarcastic white guy.
Oh yeah, Baird is definitely a stereotype. But Dom is Hispanic, but you don't have to be defined by being Hispanic.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's good that he isn't. It's not really an issue. I think Cole is very. It changes towards the end of the series. I think.
I think it's
like what you were saying before with. Him growing
he realizes he's getting older. It's not even he's a stereotypical black guy. He's very much a stereotypical full-on jock stereotype from like American jock stereotype. He's very full-on. He doesn't want to busy himself with plans or higher thinking. He just wants to get out there, fight things. And when he was playing, was it Crunchball or something? Thrashball. He's very much all the glory. He's very high intensity. He just wants to go out there.
Crunchball sounds like a much more painful sport.
Yeah. Crunchball.
I think the problem with Cole is he feels like more of a stereotype because he's essentially static for 2 games. Dom feels like the most developed character because he's different in Gears 1 to how he is in Gears 2, and then different in Gears 3 to how he is in Gears 2.
Yeah.
Cole is the same for Gears 1 and 2, and then gets some development in the 3rd one.
But in terms of diversity, I mean, they have quite a bit. Sam is clearly Australian. very much.
Sam may or may not be an Aborigine. She's got
She
an
may or may not
Australian
be.
accent, and she's quite dark-skinned. So she might be
Ty-
an Aborigine XP.
Ty is South Sea Islander. You know, the
Yeah.
whole tattoos, the very warrior culture.
He's arguably a bit of a stereotype in and of himself.
He is quite a bit of a stereotype, but he's only
But
in
we
it
don't-
for like half the games.
Yeah, we don't really see him too much, so...
Yeah, but
But he is very much
There aren't-
the peaceful warrior native.
Well, he's very much like the noble savage stereotype, which is a bit worrying.
Well, I want to agree, but I did just finish on Far Cry 3, and Dennis in that is so much worse.
well,
No, he's a magic Negro, isn't he? But still, it's...
getting into things we don't want to get into.
Dizzy is the cowboy. He's the southerner.
Dizzy is the redneck cowboy.
Yeah. At the end
Not
of the day.
Hoffman. What is the
No, not
colonel's
Hoffman's a
name?
stereotype.
Hoffman is definitely
Hoffman
a
is a
stereotype.
gruff drill sergeant who happens to not be a drill sergeant.
Oh, it is Hoffman.
He is Full Metal Jacket all over again.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Prescott. I thought I was talking about Prescott.
Prescott, interestingly, I wouldn't say so much. He's kind of a bit evil and a bit of a dickhead, but there are other sides to his character. They just don't come out when you're talking to him necessarily. But that makes sense, because whenever you see Prescott, he's talking to Phoenix or someone from Delta Squad, and he's got his public face on, him in his role as the man who nuked the continent.
The world.
Not as, well, you say the world, it's basically the continent. Sarah has a continent and some islands, but yeah, the world. Prescott has a character, but it only comes out in sort of a little bit, much more in the extended universe, but
He's very
a little bit.
extremely reserved. He disappears for long stretches of time, especially after the second game towards the third game. They mention that he's been disappearing for long stretches of time and then just coming back to give a few orders and he goes again.
Yeah.
So he's very man in the high tower.
I know we said we wouldn't talk extended universe, but I was doing some looking on Phoenix and Prescott, and the relationship between the two characters is really, really, really fucking interesting, because Phoenix appears to be the man to whom Prescott pours
This
out
is
all
Adam
his
Phoenix.
work. Yeah, Adam Phoenix, sorry. So all the doubts that you want Prescott to maybe express about the things he's done all come out when he's talking to the man who's designed the methods by which he's inflicting these...
The horrors on the world.
Yeah.
I suppose that does make a sort of sense, especially if it's done in private and reserved. But
To a man he's kidnapped and who can't possibly talk to anyone else.
well, there is that as well. But the idea of diversity in Gears of War, it's not a game. I feel that feels a particular need for any kind of. It's got quite a diverse cast, a reasonably diverse cast. I wouldn't say extremely diverse. I wouldn't say non-diverse. But also, I mean, there's also the idea that it's very much. It's not about. There doesn't seem to be any. Nobody is ever racist or sexist towards people, because it's very
Well,
much
not directly.
us v them.
Yeah. I don't think it's directly, but
I don't think it's
there could be arguments to be made about the portrayal of characters, certainly.
Yeah, but I think that's possibly just the stereotype the character ended up being, as opposed to an in-universe view of these issues.
Yeah, but that means it's our universe issue.
Yeah, well, we've got lots of issues in our universe. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't have
and
multiple.
the portrayal of
It's
characters
applying
in
it
the media
to
as well.
that might make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about the cogs as an entity, I suppose. Cogs where fascism is fine and good.
It's really not. I did make a point of this in the notes, but Phoenix and Dom, and more generally the cogs as a whole.
Not Space Marines, yeah.
One, they're not Space Marines, but that's not necessarily relevant. It's more that they're presented as jarheads, the same type of jarheads that you mow down as your stereotypical freedom fighter in almost any other game. Gears could, with very little character adjustment, quite likely be flipped so that you're playing from a Stranded point of view or a Locust point of view, and that would make your characters so much more empathic. You'd feel for them so much more, because they would be actually fighting an oppressive force. everything that happens to the gear, to Phoenix and Co, to the actual cogs, is either a product of what the cogs themselves, either what the cog itself has done in the past, or the personal actions of the characters. They're not presented as good guys. They're presented as incorrigible dickheads, but because they're also the player avatars, the player automatically takes their side and so takes on that attitude of incorrigible dickhead. They view all their actions as right because they are player, they are god. Look at any cog interaction with the Stranded. Anytime the gears interact with them,
the Stranded really do get the shit end of the stick.
Totally.
I would agree with that. I mean, the whole story of the cogs as an entity is that through their own actions they have reaped the seeds. They have sown the seeds of their own destruction.
Seeds, they put them in the ground and hit them with their sides.
Pretty much, they have reaped the seeds of their own destruction. Because of what they did in the Pendulum Wars, the Locusts were created, and then later on the Locusts attacked. They had to do something horrific, i.e., they had to glass Sarah, basically, and that, turned the Stranded against them. And then they're very much sheltered in their last remaining bastion. But that's almost it's made them more convicted than ever, given them a greater conviction than ever that they have to keep going to do what they believe
very much. It is survival of the race.
It's survival of the race, but it's what Ewan was saying. It's that they are very, very easy to portray as a faceless entity that doesn't care, that is only concerned with war, and they could easily be in any other game the antagonist faction.
It's entirely about their own survival. And the thing is, as well, the Pendulum Wars aren't what create the Locusts. They're around for a little bit before that, but no one's really aware of them.
I thought it was the Pendulum Wars because they were doing experiments on emotion. When you find the sites.
No, that's actually beforehand, because I was checking the dates and things for this.
Oh, right.
That's 100 years before it, and the Pendulum Wars are only 40, 60, some point. But they're
a long time before.
Yeah. But what was I going to say?
Well, I think we're moving from the points. It's like the cogs themselves. I mean, just look at the names of your faceless entity. They are cogs, gears
in a wheel.
They're a mechanism.
They're a mechanism for only war.
And and they will slowly but surely succeed until they come up to the Locust, in which case they don't.
Yeah, they will grind.
What do they do in the end?
They will grind down any obstacle.
Well, the cog's destroyed, the machine dies, but the constituent parts keep going. Though by that stage they've kind of screwed things up fairly heavily, obviously. I mean, it's not even clear at the end of Gears 3 whether they're going to survive or not. They've still got to deal with the pollution that the world's experiencing, and the fact that they've just lost almost all of their fuel. Certainly all the stuff the advanced machinery was geared for. It's entirely possible that they've already killed themselves, and all they've done in the process is managed to make sure that this type of life that would have succeeded them
died out first.
They've given themselves a second chance, but there's no guarantee that it's a guarantee.
It's I'm taking you with me gambit that paid off, and actually they got out of.
Well,
and the man who brought that about was Adam Phoenix. What do you think of him?
He's probably the most tragic character within it. He's very much...
Ever since I've watched Breaking Bad, and I imagine that Alex will share the same feelings about this, but ever since I've watched Breaking Bad, I cannot see him as anything else other than...
He's Bryan Cranston. He's Walter White.
He's Walter White.
Except with WMDs rather than meth.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd agree with that.
No
pretty
spoilers
much
for Breaking Bad, but...
Well, for one thing, Ben, something you need to know about Breaking Bad is that Walter kills Snape.
Yeah, Whitey, I've seen Breaking Bad.
I was thinking more in looks than anything.
He doesn't get a hell of a lot.
Just looks
yeah, definitely.
But he is easily the... Yeah, and Adam Phoenix is definitely easily... He is the character that especially when you look at him expanded upon in the first game, he's the most tragic figure in terms of the Gears and the entire world itself. He's a simple soul. He's a soldier. He's a very intelligent soldier that has been forced. He didn't push the buttons, but he was forced to make the things.
He made the
that
weapons,
brought
yeah.
the world to his knees, and he's tried to fix his mistakes. He's tried to save the Locust and humans at the same time. And
Yeah.
there's that line about he tries to do good, but all he ever does is create more ways to kill.
Yeah, he's only good at making weapons.
Yeah. And in the end, he actually sacrifices himself to fuel the final weapon.
Yeah. So I think I kind of wish that he had more of a presence in the early games, but maybe that's what improves his character. That Marcus is chasing a ghost, or what seems to be a ghost for a long while. And he finds
pretty much he's a very absentee character, but then that almost adds to him because for a long time we're not shown the man, we're just shown
his legacy.
Yeah, and then there's the assumption that gets built up with the setting and the other characters that actually the guy who designed this would be one way. You know, he would be, if you want to talk about Breaking Bad comparisons, he's the Heisenberg. The guy who designed the weapons would be Heisenberg, but when we actually find him, he's Walter White.
Yeah.
He's a good man who's just had to do terrible things in order to survive.
He either looks like Walter White or he looks like my dad, which is terrible.
That is quite...
Which is really, really odd.
Okay, I didn't realise your dad looked like Walter White.
Okay,
I'm worried now. But, yeah, he's presented as being... He is presented as one way and then shown to be another, which I think is a really good... Which I think is a really good... It's a really good presentation of a character that was completely different to what we expected him to be. And in the end, was a much more interesting character for it.
I know I'm a little bit late on this, but I really would have liked Phoenix to be Adam Phoenix to be in the story earlier and more frequently.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, we were covering that, but like we said, the story builds him up to be one way, and then he appears to be another.
But it never really gives you much explanation. Again, I know it's extended universe stuff, but all the characterization they have of him in the comics and the novels and things later, it builds up a really interesting character. And they couldn't have done it to the same depth, but there's no reason they couldn't have put that in Gears. And whilst I like the game, it does have a very, very confusing chronology. The sires and whatnot, it was a good level, it was a good section to put in, but it doesn't really make it explicitly clear.
It doesn't mesh, no. You can see that this is where the Locust began, but you don't know when, you don't know why.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just sort of there.
They could have made these things a little bit more explicit. Well, they could have put more of a breadcrumb, a trail of breadcrumbs in there.
There's a couple of voice files in the place where they find the signs, aren't there? When you go into the facility, there's...
there's explanation, and it's implied that this is what becomes the Locust, but it's still... The whole thing's a bit confusing, and his role in the early war is again left confusing. Yeah.
He's an interesting character, and he's easily the most... When you find out everything about him, the most relatable character, but ultimately he's not... He is too distant. Yeah, I think you'd probably be right on that one.
Yeah. What do you think, Alex? Do you think he should have been brought in earlier?
Adam Phoenix?
Yep.
In many ways, yeah, I think I do. Like, if anything, I'm not sure if I've ever been a really big fan of his position in the series anyway. I mean, obviously, he kind of sits in my mind as the instigator for everything, as I'm sure he does for you guys. But I don't know, I would have liked to have seen his face rather than him be... Obviously we do later on in the games, but he's too elusive. And I don't know, for some reason I don't like that in his character. The fact that he is more or less on the sidelines when he's been such a big part in all of it. I don't know, maybe that's a really weird standpoint to take, but I would have liked to see more of him throughout the games. Because he's had such an impact on the world, I think he should have maybe been awkwardly forced into the similar situations as Marcus. He should have been forced to sit through and see what he's done.
It's very hard to imagine how it might have turned out if he had a stronger presence in it, because you do see his legacy and his shadow a lot. You visit his manor in the first game, and
I think it would have made it a very different game. Not necessarily a better one, but it would have definitely changed the whole experience for Adam Phoenix to actually have a more active.
He might have actually ended up filling the role of Anya.
Yeah, he may well have done. He may well have just negated Anya entirely, which it would make the. It would certainly add a little bit more sausage to the mix.
That's the point you made.
That's a lovely.
That's a lovely image. The euphemisms are not helping.
These are amazing.
There's too many bangers in the mash. Too many dogs in the bun.
So let's end this madness.
This
and move on from Adam Phoenix and move on towards the Locust. So Alex, the visual design of the Locust, they're very they're absolutely underground creatures. They're very pale and scaly, tiny eyes.
Well, they are lizards. They were based off lizards.
Yeah. So it's very obvious when you just look at the average drone.
Yeah.
I like the way that particularly Gears of War has expanded it, because often in shooters you get quite a small pool of enemies to fight. Like you have your basic grunt, you'll have your tough. I'm going to pull the Halo thing here. You'll have your grunt, your elite. In the later games, they brought in the Jackal, which is this light sniper thing, and then you got your big heavy tanks with the.
Jackals are in for the first game.
Jackals are in for the first game, but they're not snipers. They're just kind of useless.
Because they don't have the sniper.
Anyway.
Yeah, but and then you got your big tanky ones, which are the hunters. But Gears of War has a very large pool of enemies that you can fight. And
it does,
quite
definitely.
a lot of creatures that you fight as well throughout the game. I mean,
It definitely keeps you guessing.
Notable section from the second one where you fight a worm that's like 10 miles long.
Oh, the rift worm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't really fight that worm, though.
Well, you fight it from the inside out.
Yeah, the worm is a level. It's not a thing. I mean, yeah, you fight it in a narrative sense, but in the gameplay sense, you really don't fight the worm.
Well, it's more trying to avoid being crushed by the worm's digestive system.
Yeah, but again, that's an environmental hazard. I mean, it's not like a God of War scenario where Phoenix is on top riding the worm and
that would
flinging
be
out bad dudes.
Like some sort of Doctor Strangelove. Yeah, I think that's another strength in the Gears of War series. It's that with each game, your enemy pool increases. It adds a lot of flavour, and it always, for me, brought a lot of anticipation when the next game was about to be released. I always wanted to see what enemy was about to be brought in. Like in the third one, when they announced Lambent, just the whole idea of having enemies that were going to explode when I killed them.
Yeah, the third faction.
Yeah, it's another hazard. It definitely added a lot more flavour to the game.
So what do you think of them from an art standpoint, Alex?
In what respect?
Just in what does their appearance and their design convey?
Aggression, loneliness.
I may be going too broad here.
Okay. Well, the idea is that they're humanoid. At the end of the day, they are meant to be some sort of dark reflection of the cogs. Really, they accept. Well, it's kind of like the cog, as we said earlier. They are a mechanism. They are a well-oiled machine who use machines. The locusts they're kind of the same thing, except they're more of a hive mind. They are a horde. They are the organic counterparts, but they very much, in my opinion, fulfill the same job.
They're the sticky meat that gets stuck in the machine.
Yeah, definitely.
I always hate that.
The sausage machine.
That's when you're trying to play something.
Enough with the sausage.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that artistically that they get The style of the Locust definitely it fits each game in that the designs of each enemy gradually, I think, gets more chaotic as the games progress. So, in the first one, where you've got the smaller pool of enemies, it's very ordered. I wouldn't say that the game's predictable, but so much as...
They definitely have various types, and they're very easily spotted.
Definitely. But it's a case of they have very clear defined positions within the Locust army, and it's far more militarized. And then the next game where they bring in the Lambert at the end, or they hint at the Lambert at the end, and there is this larger pool. It's starting to lose its stability, and it's becoming more chaotic. Then the third one, where you got Lambert, that's really when it starts to come out, in that there is no true form to these things. It is pure chaos. There's a large pool of normal Locust. There's a large pool of Lambert Locust, almost one for every enemy. I think Boomers are the only ones that don't get a Lambert version, aren't they?
No, I think they do.
They get
It's just very if it's the only thing you know about how they're going to look is they're going to be yellow and they'll glow.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're quite unpredictable.
But yeah, the point still stands. Like, it still gets more... It gets more chaotic as things go on. That is their art style. It's how the whole race evolves throughout the game in literally every sense, I think.
And I think that reflection of humanity aspect's quite prominent in the Queen Mirror.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Queen Mirror, her name, I suppose.
Yeah.
What did you all think of her? Do you think she was a satisfying big bad?
Oh yeah,
satisfying nemesis.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's nice to have a big bad female antagonist rather than yet another guy who wants to take over the world and is really, really boring, etc., etc. Myra definitely brought something slightly new to the table. She has a lot of the very tropey traits, I think, but just her, because she's female, it allows for a slightly different approach. Which definitely, I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Personally, I'm usually automatically prejudiced against the character if I see boobs carved into their armour. Just no, on so many levels. It just pisses me off automatically. As well as that, I found her personality to be just a little bit too insufferable. Like she's made to be an antagonist. I'm aware that you're not supposed to sympathise with her, even though she's making some valid points. But she not only annoyed me visually, but I just found her to be a little bit irksome to listen to. The best kind of self-satisfied person, in my opinion, should be someone who you can still disagree with, but whose words get just underneath your skin, who convince you that maybe there's a chance that what they're saying is right. Mira never does that. Anything Mira says, the player is very likely to automatically just say, "No, you are the enemy. Haha! I shoot you in the face."
No, I disagree. I definitely disagree with you there, Ewan. Like you say it yourself, you recognise that she had some valid points, but yeah, there's always going to be a part of any gaming crowd that are going to say, no, you're wrong, you're the bad guy, blah 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 blah. But no, she does make valid points, and she does do that. Just getting under your skin, she is planting the seed of doubt in players, I think. She
does actually have a bit of a character change between 2 and 3. 2, she's very regal and distant. She's a bit like Hoffman, I suppose.
She's the imperious queen.
Yeah, certainly.
And then 3, she's...
3, becomes a field commander, pretty much. She's very hands-on.
I think it's that the Locust they're designed, they look quite human. I mean, they don't look human, but they have the same body type, at least the drones do, as the humans, and they are supposed to be the dark, twisted reflection. And especially that's very, very, very prominent in the first game. In the second game, it becomes much less so, because we discover the Lambert. Or did we discover the Lambert in the first game?
We discovered the Lambert in the second game.
First game has Lambert wretches.
but we just it's never really it's not a huge
As a
thing in
main
the first game.
force.
But as a main force, they come out in the second game, and it's very much the development, as I spoke about earlier, with the architecture, and we see that they're producing this huge city thing, this sparkling, beautiful city. At least to a Locust perspective, it's very, very straight, lots of straights and right angles, not a lot of curves. Very brutal, sort of hard, straight mindset.
Yeah.
The Locusts do develop because there's almost three faces. There's not just the good face and the bad face to root for. There's, on one hand, you've got two civilizations that have both done unspeakable things to the other, and then there's the third face, which is the Lambent.
Which is just chaos.
The Locusts develop from this organised horde, which is very driven, very focused, and then when the Hollow gets bombed by the light mass, they become a bit more disparate, but the Queen is still holding them together largely. And then after the Hollows get flooded, when they sink Jacinto, the Locusts become far more. They just become barbaric. They descend into chaos.
Yeah,
They're descending towards the Lambent. And it brings up the storyline trailer for the third game, the one with the Mad World, where Dom is running through Char. Basically. And it shows that the Locusts are attacking the cogs. And then they all turn around because they see an emergence hole. And they don't know it's going to be there. And out of it come the Lambent.
Yeah.
And the Locusts all turn around and start with the cogs shooting at the Lambent. It's this continuing development of the characters that the Locusts aren't the dripping monsters in the dark we think them to be. They could be just like us. Now, both sides have made horrible decisions, but there is a dripping monster in the darkness waiting to get you.
It's always good to see like the monster that's afraid of the other monster.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about some of the themes of the series as a whole, and I just came up with a list of them while I was going with the notes for this. So we've got masculinity, which we talked about, loss, which again we talked about, perseverance. Yeah.
I think that the series does feature a lot of perseverance. A lot of it is probably just hard bit and cynicism into the characters. I mean,
they have rendezvous with death.
Yeah. Dom, at least in the second part of the series, doesn't expect to survive. Marcus wants the war over. He's very driven to just finish the war. He just wants it over. Baird, he
wants to be the leader, damn it. He just wants to be the leader.
Baird wants to be the leader, but he's very sucker. He doesn't think things are going to get better, but that doesn't mean he's going to stop trying. And then Cole, he does develop that he's getting older. He's losing what makes him special.
Yeah,
I think with Baird, it's a
but
case
he's going to keep going. He's not going to stop.
So that's good for me.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think with Baird, it's not a case that he's just cynical. I think it's a case that he doesn't want to lose. Whereas with Marcus, Dom's a case that he wants to persevere because he wants to do what he thinks is right. Dom wants to win. Baird doesn't want to lose. I think there's a definite distinction that could be drawn there. Baird hates failing.
They're both persevering regardless.
Yeah, definitely, but for different reasons. I think that those reasons are inherently different.
Okay. Well, there's also I've also parenthood. I thought less parenthood, more sins of the father.
There is quite a bit of that.
There is quite a bit of that, both directly in Marcus and his dad, and also things like you're living and fighting in the shattered world of what your leaders have created.
I think there's also a third one, which is humanity and the Locusts. The Locusts know they were created by humans. The Locusts know because Queen Mira has told them. Queen Mira remembers from the Sires being released, but humanity doesn't know. Humanity is actually quite ignorant in this, but it is very much the sins of the father. The humans drove the Sires out, or the Sires were ordered to be exterminated, and then some scientists took them away. They hid them underground, and then the Locusts return 100 years later to wreak what they see as vengeance.
Yeah,
to retake the surface.
There's definitely consequences to everything that all the characters do. You're never really going to have. I suppose at the end of the third one, it's a solution, but the consequences are you have just committed genocide.
It's three aspects of three different ideals of parenthood. There's one parental relationship that seemed to be quite close, seems quite loving, which is Adam Phoenix and his father. There's one parental aspect that is quite distrustful, almost disgusted, which is the cogs and the leaders. And then there's one which is full of rage and vengeance. It's almost a rage at the heavens. Given they're underground, between the locust and the humans.
Do you mean Adam Phoenix and his son?
Adam Phoenix and his son, yes.
I was going to say, because I don't think Granddaddy Phoenix has played too much of a role.
I'm sorry, I know.
Apart from his brief cameo in the second one.
I'd love to see Granddaddy
loving
Phoenix.
affection between Marcus Phoenix and Adam Phoenix.
See, there's parenthood and environmentalism.
Well,
No blood for emulsion.
Emulsion
No
is-
blood for emulsion.
Emulsion is definitely an oil allegory. It's very, very plain, very clear.
Don't make corpses dance for money.
Yeah. Also, the planet fighting back in a way. I always think it's very, very interesting looking at the environment itself. It seems it's a destroyed world, but it never gives the sense that it's post-apocalyptic.
No, the world.
It's like post-apocalyptic fiction is always humanity is won over nature, and nature's dead.
well,
This nature's very much alive and it's fighting.
I don't know.
It's winning. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that?
I'd agree with that. I mean, in this sense, this isn't. It is technically a post-apocalyptic world because they would be considered what could be an apocalyptic event, i.e., Sarah getting, kill Saffit from orbit. Nature is very much not dead. Nature is fighting back. The rift worm, the worms, and all the creatures of the hollow are very much they're natural, even if they've been augmented by the locust. So there is that idea of nature is fighting back, and in a lot of spaces you can see it. I mean, when you walk through that station I mentioned earlier, where you fight the berserker, there's this real sense that humanity's cities that they've raised to the sky are crumbling, and nature is slowly clawing them back to the earth.
Yeah. Okay, so that's.
Is it though? I mean, it's also pretty well demonstrated that most of the centre of the entire continent, which compromises most of the land,
is a charred, blackened mess.
Yeah, and what's left is largely deserts or polluted by it. I mean, an isolated greenhouse.
I suppose yes, but there's also other aspects to the fury of nature, like the sandstorms you run into while in the desert, which is very much just it is man v nature, and nature's taken a pretty devastating hit, but it's not quite dead yet.
Yeah, it's definitely still kicking and fighting. So we talked about the themes in it, and we haven't actually spoken so much about Gears of War Judgments as the main trilogy, because we're not so well versed in it. I didn't really like it so much.
I haven't played it.
I haven't played it.
I played it. I didn't like it so much, but
I really want to play it.
it is a very different
really want
game.
to.
It is very. You can definitely see how it differs from the Epic games, because it's made by People Can Fly, who made Bulletstorm. You can see their influence in it. So even the trailers, it's kind of a Michael Bay feel to it.
Yeah, it's not sell me on the game really.
Yeah, I mean it's worth a play, but I didn't really. It kind of
Didn't
detracts
engross you.
from the series. It's a good game, but possibly not so much of a good Gears game.
Yeah, I really want to play it. If I get the opportunity, I will. But
Definitely
I don't really
play it. I'd say.
Xbox anymore.
But I think if I'm the only one who has played it,
We wouldn't feel comfortable with making.
we wouldn't feel comfortable. Perhaps at a later date. So, to round off, the future of the series. How do you think it's going to go? Where would you like it to go? Do you think they could have a prequel, a sequel?
Let it die.
I think it needs to die at this point. I mean, I would love the
Do
Pendulum
you think
Wars game.
there's nothing left in the universe to explore?
I'm
No,
sure there
no,
is
no.
that you could do, but I don't think anything that you could do that wouldn't detract from the feeling of it overall.
Yeah,
New
definitely.
IP is not ridiculously hard to find. There's always new things you can say. The first three are fine. You could do prequels, you could do sequels, but what are you going to get out of it that you couldn't say better with a game dedicated or a series dedicated to that theme?
I would agree totally. I mean, we have the characters who, for the most part, go through their character arcs across 3 games. I mean, we have Judgment as well, which is a prequel, but it is a different game, as we've said.
Mm.
Let the characters die. Let the series just die, because it's done. It's finished.
Like Dom's wife, bullet to the head before it suffers more.
Pretty much. Don't drag it.
A bullet that makes it explode.
It can explode.
It can be expanded in novel form, in comic form, in other media. It can be expanded, but in terms of games, I don't see an evolution of the series that can come, because you don't want to just be churning out the same Gears of War game endlessly, because you'll just get annoyed.
Yeah,
The series would grind on and on and on, and fewer people would like it as time went on, because it would just be the same game. I honestly don't see an evolution to it. You could have revolutions to the combat, but they wouldn't. There doesn't seem to be an evolution to the combat, because there have been other games like Gears of War released, such as Bulletstorm, and I can't really think of any others off the top of my head, but I'm not a huge 360 guy.
There was one other game that was released, and it was Bulletstorm, and that was every colour-based shooter ever was that game.
Other games have tried to copy the formula.
What do you mean? Bulletstorm is not really that cover-based.
They've tried to copy the Gears of War formula, and none of them have quite grasped the success that Gears has. It happens sometimes. You get a game that defines a genre, defines a certain, very specific genre, and once that is done, go away from it.
Yeah.
Don't try and replicate, because you'll just fail.
Yeah, I was sort of sharing those same feelings. Like, I tried coming up with different ways that they could change it up. The only possible way that I think they could put some more life into it would be a genre change. But even then, I don't really know.
Are we thinking move that you could have the game set within the settings, like an RTS, possibly?
Yeah, like a small squad-based RTS. But even in that, it just seems to be doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah. New IP.
As a third person action shooter, I think it's gone as far as it can go, to be honest. However, do you agree, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would have loved to see something about the Pendulum Wars, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have. I don't think it would have added anything.
I think it would have lost its feel. Like, without the Locust, it would just be standard military shooter with a bit of a sci-fi edge.
Yeah, definitely, pretty much. So, at the end of the day, I think I definitely agree with you guys. It needs to. I want to see what Epic are capable of with the new generation. I want to see some progression in the gaming universe, because Gears was standout. Like, the story was better than most that we've seen of the past generation. There was a lot of fluidity between the games, but I want to see more of that in the next generation of games. I don't want to dwell on something that's now past.
Yeah. So
put the game out to pasture.
Put the game out to pasture.
Let it influence the next generation of games, and don't touch it again.
Well, I think that we shouldn't do another Gears game because.
Well, it's been said, I think. So yeah. I mean, possibly we may go full circle and see a vehicle-based Gears of War.
It could work,
and then they will invade the Unreal Tournament. So, I think we could cover a lot more topics, but I'm afraid we are out of time. So, thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed the Gears of War special. Next week I'll be back with Kev and Jack again, and thank you. I've been Callum Lewis.
I've been Ben Rimmer.
Ewan Callicroft.
He doesn't remember.
I was once Alex White.
And goodbye.
So I should stop the thing now.
Yes,
you should stop the thing now.
All right.